The main reasons Europe is so dependent on Russian energy are geology and geography. Let's focus on gas, the Russian fuel Europe depends on most. The EU doesn't have much of its own gas to produce, and it's already importing about as much as it can from its friendly neighbor to the north, Norway. So the EU imports about 40% of its gas from Russia through a long-established system of transit pipelines, and typically pays less for this gas than it would to import LNG from distant places like Qatar or the USA. The EU has taken some steps to minimize Russia's leverage over recent years. It's liberalized its gas markets, built interconnector pipelines between member states, built LNG terminals. So far, so sensible. And yet, there is a feeling that many European policymakers failed to heed the warning Russia sent in 2014, the last time it invaded Ukraine. Back then, German policymakers, for instance, said that they would review and reduce their dependence on Russian gas, but they then proceeded to support the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline and to allow the sale of German gas storage facilities to Gazprom. Finally, there's the fact that the EU has failed to match its good progress decarbonizing the power sector with efforts to reduce how much gas it burns to keep buildings warm, hence the current dependence. Energy trade between Europe and Russia has continued since the invasion of Ukraine because both sides want it to. Western sanctions exempted energy trade to the dismay of the Baltic states and of the Ukrainians themselves. And while the UK has banned Russian oil and Poland has announced it will ditch Russian oil and coal this year, a majority of European decision makers, crucially the Italian and German governments, feel that a Russian energy embargo would not be worth the cost. They are correct that an embargo would be incredibly expensive and force a lot of European factories and industry to shut down, but it's certainly unfortunate the EU is in a position where it feels unable to deny the Putin regime a crucial source of revenue. Russia, for its part, has also been content to keep the gas flowing. It's actually earned over 22 billion euros from selling fossil fuels to Europe since the war began. There have been some threats of a shutoff. Putin demanded in late March to be paid in rubles for gas, but this is a political ploy to further boost artificial demand for the ruble, to get the West to subvert its own sanctions, and perhaps to protect Gazprom Bank from future sanctions. It does not indicate that the gas will be cut off in the coming days. Indeed, the fact that Russia has been content to let the gas keep flowing suggests that the euros and dollars it earns from gas sales are more useful, despite current sanctions on the Russian central bank, than opponents of a European energy embargo would like to admit. There are three main ways Europe could adapt to the loss of Russian gas, and indeed the EU is already taking many of these steps as part of its effort to reduce Russian gas consumption by 2/3 this year. So, first, buying non-Russian gas. That means maximizing imports through other pipelines and through LNG terminals, and even building new LNG terminals even though these won't be ready for a few years. Second is fuel switching. The EU will burn more coal for electricity, and Belgium is keeping some nuclear plants open for longer. There are also plans for rationing gas amid a shortage. That means so a hospital, for instance, would lose gas last after a steel mill or a chemical plant. Third is going greener, and this is a very important one. That means building out renewable energy, making buildings more energy efficient, and installing heat pumps so you don't need gas to heat buildings. Unfortunately, it has to be said that the energy conservation side of this has been neglected. Not until March 30th did a German minister make an appeal to citizens to voluntarily save energy, and we are seeing very few of the energy-saving policy measures we saw after the 1973 oil shock, things like free public transport or speed limits or turning thermostats down in offices. And this is all happening just a few months after the COP26 climate conference, where European governments once again pledged to phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. And yet, amid an energy crisis, they are cutting fuel taxes rather than sending money to poor households to compensate and letting high prices work as market signals. We can do better.